by the end of the day, everyone will take something away from this when you leave here today. All right? Any questions or anything before we get started? All right. So if you go to the very first page, introduction, there's a couple of scenarios, couple financial situations that we're going to cover. We're not going to cover every one, but if I could have a volunteer to read the very first one that's listed.
You mean Gil's story?
Yes.
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
For the last 2 years, young children out of her mother's home and into a place of her own. As she cashes each paycheck, she keeps what she needs for the coming week and deposits the rest into a savings account. When she moves, she will need to start paying rent and utilities for the first time. She also knows that she should set up a budget.
So that's a pretty, familiar scenario for a lot of people, or maybe somebody that you know. We can skip down to the third one down there for Carl. Anyone want to read Carl? This young man? Okay.
Carl is recently divorced and has a young son. While he and his wife work together, she handled the bill paying. He replaced their joint accounts with those of his own. And although he has been writing checks, he does not feel that he is as organized as he could be. Sometimes he finds it easier to rely on his credit cards than to deal with his checking account.
Thank you. All right. On the next page, someone want to read about Ray. Very first one at the top on the next page. You got Ray? All right.
Ray is still in high school, but he has big plans for his future. Because, his family may have difficulties sending him to college. He has been working part-time now, saving for the end. He plans to get a full-time job as soon as he does. And he works until he's start school.
Okay. Thank you. So, a couple different scenarios. What do they all have in common?
A goal.
Was that?
A goal.
They all have a goal? Yep. They all had a goal. Anything else? They're all in some type of financial, either starting over financially, or just beginning financially, or they have some type of obstacles or some things that they're trying to overcome financially. And that's something that I think everybody in this room can relate to, some part of that. So, and even us as bankers, it's funny because a lot of people think because you work for the bank that you got it all together financially. And I'm sure these two will agree with me. So a lot of times we neglect ourselves because we're helping out a whole bunch of other people or our customers with getting their financial lives in order. So this affects everybody. Everybody has to be in order financially, and it's something that is just a good feeling, a strong feeling, and for the young people to be here also, to be educated around that is something that we can't take for granted, and it's something that comes back to affect you negatively sometimes when you're not prepared, or when you haven't had that plan together, or when you haven't had that budget together. So that's why it's important that we're here today, and hopefully, like I said, we get you to learn something out here today. So on page 4, just going over some of the objectives that we're going to cover on this first section. Understand why it's important to have a checking account. Learn how to properly use and manage a checking account. Learn about some of the other bank products and services that are available, such as savings accounts and loans. Introduce products and programs that may help to improve your financial situation.
Okay.
Just talk a little bit more about checking account, please, when you get into that.
Okay. So we'll be working from our workbooks from pages 5 to 13. As Russell said, this class covers a little bit of everything. I know several of you have already had checking accounts, and you already probably have checking accounts, so this covers all levels. So in some cases, this may be a little bit below your level, or it may be above your level. But we're going to start from the basics, the foundations of money management. One thing that PNC does offer, because we've all oftentimes had situations within our lives where things didn't go right, not balanced in checkbooks and spending more money than what you need to, or, you know, you may have had a checking account, what we call charge-off, where something has happened and the bank had to charge your account off, which means you owe money to a bank. In those cases, a lot of people can't get checking accounts for any reason, even if you pay it off, okay? Because you're reported to what we call check systems. And check systems is almost like a credit system or a verification system that banks use with each other to determine whether or not this person is worthy of opening up a checking account. But PNC Bank, we're one of the only banks that offer what we call a second chance checking account. Okay, it's called a foundations checking account. And in order to be able to establish that type of checking account, we require that you go through what we call this Foundations of Money Management class. So this is even designed for folks who understand the checking account and have had one before, and those who are opening up an account for the first time. So can anybody tell me, what is a checking account?
A payment system.
A payment system, right. Anything else?
A depository for money.
Right, right. So a checking account is a deposit account. It's offered by banks, and it allows you to use your money in a variety of ways. Pay bills, go grocery shopping. There's different things that you can use. But why do we need one? There are a lot of benefits to having a checking account. So can anybody tell me one of the benefits to having a checking account?
You don't walk around with your money in your pocket.
Security, right. You're not
Okay.
walking around with money in your pocket, because carrying too much cash can be dangerous, right? Okay?
A lot of places require direct deposit.
Correct, right. So convenience, because a lot of places now require it.
A lot of credit reference.
Yep, credit reference, anything else?
It keeps track of things that you spend your money on.
Record keeping, yeah. Everybody's hitting them all. Anything else? What's a big one? Something that we see, bankers see a lot, is cost. You know, I mean, it's cheaper to have a checking account than using alternatives. So when you think about cost, you know, what it costs you when you don't have a checking account. So, you know, insurance is a big one too. You know, it's a way to make sure that your money is insured. So when you think about, and we're actually on page 5, but we're going to turn to page 6, because I'm not going to read everything word for word. Everything I'm talking about is actually covered on page 5. So what you say on page 5 is a checking account is often the first relationship a person has with the bank. And having one and managing it properly will be important when you want to move forward and use other banking services. I heard somebody say credit. It helps you build a relationship. It helps you establish a relationship. How can you access your money when you have a checking account? There's different ways. Anyone?
With a check. With a check.
Right. Another way is what?
Debit card.
Right.
ATM card.
Right. So when we talk about what people do when they don't have a checking account, so what are some of the things that people do when they don't have a checking account? Purchase. Right. What else?
Money orders.
Money, handling your money versus having a checking account. When you're purchasing money orders, I don't know, money order can cost what, anywhere from 50 cents to $5. I know we charge $5 for it. So if you have 5 bills that you have to pay a month, check cashing places are very expensive. I know that they probably charge a certain percentage whatever the amount of the check is. So our foundation's checking account is what? $5 a month. So just think about the cost savings when it comes to checking accounts. So we talked about the ATM, some of the features of having a checking account, direct deposit, I heard someone say direct deposit. Another thing is you have automated bill payments. So on page 7, it lists what some of the checking account features are.
What is that FDIC?
Federal Deposit Insurance Company. So what that is that FDIC protects your money. Okay, so it's the insurance that you have, that the bank has coverage for you in case something happens. So in case the bank falters, or so your money is protected. So if the bank were to shut down and you had $50,000 in the bank, you are insured for that. So that's a good question. Anything else? Okay. So we're gonna work off of page 6, if you guys wanna turn to page 6. So what do people do without a checking account? We talked about it. The biggest one are the check cashing stores that they indicate in the second paragraph. They do provide a service, and at times it may be the best alternative for some people. But we talked about safety, the first bullet point. Safety issues concerning carrying cash. When you use a check casher, you cash your entire check and walk out the door carrying all of that money, right? When you need to make payments on bills, you decide to do this in cash or purchasing money orders, something that we touched on. It may cost you more to use the services of a check cashing service than to have a checking account. It is important that you compare the costs that would apply to you in your particular situation. Any questions on that? Turn to page 7 again. The checking account features, we talked about the ATMs, the debit cards, direct deposit, bank by phone, automated bill payments, and multiple accounts. Has anyone, who uses the ATM? Anyone use the ATM? Okay. What have you noticed that's different from the past when it comes to ATM?
Your card comes out, and you put your own, you used to come out at the end. You used to leave your card all the time.
Yeah, that's a headache for us. That's a headache when that happens for the
I
bankers.
can't tell you how many people leave their cards in the
I was
ATM.
actually pretty happy to have it.
Oh, yeah, and what we have to go through when that happens, so we're kind of happy that do. Anything else that you've noticed differently than ATMs of the past? Anybody make deposits through an ATM? Okay, so there used to be a time when you had to fill out an envelope, whether you were depositing checks or cash. You had to take the time to write this envelope out, put the envelope through the ATM, maybe wait a while for your money to be available. Okay, because what happens in that case is that we had to physically go in, to read our job a lot of it too, but we had to physically go in, pull all those envelopes out, two people, verify what you said was in there, because believe it or not, sometimes people did put empty envelopes in there. But we had to verify what you said was on the envelope, was in the envelope, then we had to send it down for processing. But because of technology, I just love technology. Now, you can go to an ATM machine, and in some machines, you can put up to 30 checks in at one time and just feed it without it. And those machines will scan those checks, read the check amount. Okay, you just verify if it was okay. You hit deposit okay, and then you can actually print an image of all of those checks. So whether you have a single check or multiple checks, you can print an image of those checks that'll come out with your receipt. Another nice thing is cash, the same thing. People put cash in the envelopes, they're like, this is cash, I want my cash available immediately. Now when you go to an ATM, you can put the cash in, okay? Some machines are single bills, a lot of them, or up to 50 bills at one time. So when I'm telling people about, or I'm instructing people on how to use it, they'll say, you mean $50? I said, no, 50 bills. So, you can have 50 hundreds, and it'll put them in. So as long as it's 50 bills, and it'll spit it out if it's less than 50, but it makes it available right away. So you can actually do your banking even when the banks are closed. And as long as you do those before 10 o'clock at night, that's available right away if it's cash, and if it's a check for PNC. Now, there are some guidelines for new accounts, but typically our availability policy in a lot of cases is next day, just depending on the amount of the check. But it's no different than going inside the branch, so we make it real convenient for you. How many of you do that? Okay, a lot. Okay. So again, I think that the features that we have are really nice. So debit cards. So debit cards and check cards, we already talked about that, that's on page 8. The benefits for those are that they're very convenient to have. You have control, because the check card uses the funds that are already in your checking account, and you have the ATM access. Okay? Direct deposit, I heard someone talk about direct deposit, that's a feature of a checking account. What's nice about direct deposit?
You don't have to worry.
It's in your account, you get paid, the money is in your account. You don't have to worry about standing in line, or, waiting for the bank doors to open, and go in and get your cash, or cash your check, all right? Okay. Safety, direct deposit is safe. Again, you're not carrying cash around, it's in your checking account. You have access to your funds the day that you need it. Convenience, no matter where you are on payday. As I said, at work, traveling, you don't have to worry, I gotta be back from vacation because I get paid. And I have to get my paycheck. And reliable, it eliminates the worry. So you can be very certain that your pay is deposited into your account on time. So other bank services that we offer, PNC offers 24 hours of access to it. So if you want to tell me how that happens, 24-hour access. Online banking.
On the phone, once you put in like your user ID and your PIN number from your card, you go automatically know how much you have in your account and what has been withdrawn and everything.
So it's very convenient to have a banking account because you can access your funds 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether you do it online, by phone, on your telephone. So it sounds like some of you already bank with PNC or have banking. So a lot of us have cell phones. You can actually even do your banking on the phone. So one thing I wanted to kind of go back to how you can do your banking as far as making deposits. So our technology is so sophisticated, you can actually make a deposit on your mobile phone. Not cash, we haven't got that sophisticated yet, but you can deposit a check. So has anyone done that yet on their mobile phone or have got a demonstration? How do you like it? So tell us about it.
Actually, it was convenient, it was easy, I didn't have to stand in line at the ATM, I didn't have to go inside the bank. And I wasn't in the area, so I needed to deposit, so it was very good.
Right. So as long as you have a smartphone, I'm sorry, did you have a question? So as long as you have a smartphone, I'm
How
sorry.
long does it take to clear when you take the picture?
Same thing as the ATM. If you put it in before 10 o'clock at night, okay, it's next day. So it's no different than coming in the branch. Okay, so that's very nice. There are some maximums that you can deposit on the phone versus the ATM and in the branch. I believe it's $500 is the maximum check amount. And I think there's a monthly maximum amount. But it is, most people that come in to deposit much smaller, or even going outside to the ATM. If it's cold, you don't even want to go outside to the ATM, so you can sit in your house and make a deposit. We always say, the brighter the light, the darker the surface, it's good.
Save your check though.
Pardon me, save your check, save your check for a couple of weeks, that's what we always tell you. I wish I had one, because I would have to do it demo. What did you
I have a question. Can you do it on the tablet as well?
Yeah, oh yeah, you can do it, yeah, you can do it on a tablet. Good question, because that's usually how we demonstrate it in the branches. We have iPads. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So on page 11. 11 just gives you a demonstration of how to write a check. For those of you who have never had a checking account, I know a lot of you are very familiar with how to write a checking account. So the basic components of writing a checking account is always make sure you date it, which is number 1. Number 2 would be, you have to have a payee. Who are you making the check payable to? Number 3 is the written amount. That's the actual dollar amount of the check. And number 4 is the written check amount. So 5 would be your signature, and 6 would be a memo line. What is this check being used for? You guys have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, one thing on writing the check, is the date. That date is very important. One thing that unfortunately we see a lot is, someone said, I wrote them the check, but I wrote the 18th on there, it's only the 10th. You write a check, and you put the 18th on there, or a post-dated check, that person can still cash that check.
It's
So-
still negotiable, there's no
It's
such
still
thing as a
negotiable.
post-dated check. You know, thanks, Russell, we get that a lot in the branches, someone will come in and say, why didn't they pay my check? You know, I had an agreement that this person said they were gonna hold it. I sent this check out and I wrote it for the 21st of the month, it's only the 10th of the month. So there's really no such thing as a post-dated check. So once you write it, it's considered negotiable, so he makes a very good point. And that's not it, so it does say that you should not write if you do checks, since checks may be processed before the date on that check.
And a couple other important things on writing your check is, you know, if you're writing it to somebody, you know, make sure you're filling out, you know, that person who you're paying to the order of. You make sure you're filling out that name completely and try not to leave any spaces in there, because someone can alter that check, just as a security precaution. And then also on the memo line, you know, make sure you record on that memo line what that check was for. Because a lot of times you may need to go back into your records and find, okay, I wrote this check out, who did I write it to in order to prove that a check was paid, or in order to prove that, you know, the right account got credited, you know, when you're making the payment, you're paying the bill. So that memo line is a very important line also. And then the most important thing is to sign your signature on there, on that line, because every bank has your signature on file. You know, whenever you open up an account, I don't care if it's from PNC Bank or whatever bank it is, they're gonna have your signature on file. So we wanna make, and that's a security reason, we wanna make sure that that check that's coming from your account, and you actually wrote that check and you signed your signature there.
Now, we have had situations where you may sign a check and give it to somebody and say, okay, just write this out, we may put it, and sometimes the bank checks that, so we've had situations where we've gotten calls and said, we need to get in touch with this person before we can pay this check, because the handwriting looks different than what the rest of the check looks like, and that's really for your security, just to make sure no one got a hold of you. So you should really never sign blank checks as well, like you're keeping them in your checkbook and say, I'm just gonna sign a bunch of them. That should never occur as well. So if you turn to page 12, so there is an example on here. So if someone can just read the for example. Anyone?
For example, assume that Lisa Patton had opened a checking account with her local PNC Bank branch. If Lisa wanted to write a check to her son's daycare center, the completed check might look like this. Can you read it?
The date of March 2nd, 2007, she made it payable to Sunshine Daycare Center, as Russell said. Just write the complete pay out there, $45.50, and then you have to write $45.50. Okay? Your signature and the memo. And as you said, that's what week the daycare was working. Sometimes that's very important to write something on the memo line. Okay? It says here, note that the written words, 45, start at the far left. And you want to make sure you do that so no one can change it to $245. Because in a lot of cases, the written amount is the legal amount of the check, not the dollar amount that you write out, okay? After you complete the check, the next step is to record the information from the check. So why do you think it's important to use a check register? Why is it important to record the information? Correct. Because I think when I introduced it last week, I said 99% of the time, what you say that you have in your account, and what PNC says you have in your account, so if you go check it online, and all too often as managers, we see a lot of people say, well, the ATM told me I had $300 in my account. Or, you know, I looked online and they said I had enough to write this check. But when you think about it, when you write a check and you send it out and you give it to someone, you know, they may hold on to it. So at PNC, we may show that you have a lot more than what you're showing in your register. So oftentimes when folks don't keep a register, this is when you bounce a check and when that's occurring. Do we need any more books? Any more
Yes,
work?
a couple more.
Okay. Here's one. So using a check register is important. So real quickly, examples of some check registers. So using the check register, after writing her check, Lisa Patton's check register might be like this. So her check number was 103, if you look at the check number, she dated it 3/2. Sunshine Daycare, $45.50, and then her new balance. So she had a balance forward. And that's why it's really important to keep a check register. You need to, it's important to keep record of everything, especially the ATM withdrawals and the POS transactions, because it's very easy for you to forget when you go shopping, to come back home if you're not carrying a register with you, to forget. And in most cases, that's where we see where folks get in trouble when it comes to bouncing checks, because they use the check card and they forget to put that in the register, okay? So Russell's gonna take over on, any questions?
On page 12, when you have the example of that check, if you have a space like after Sunshine Daycare Center, somebody could type in, or write in, or their name, and you already cash that check.
No. So yeah, just to let you know on that, so when a check is made payable to a business or a person, or it says "or" on there, we're not gonna cash that check, at all if it's made payable to a business and a person.
No, I mean, not, well, just.
Or if it's made payable to two people.
Exactly.
So if it's made payable to two people, we won't cash that check unless that second person is there with identification.
Even if it says or?
Even if it says, well, unless that second person is there with identification, or it's a joint account. Now, if it's a joint account, you can deposit that check into a joint account, it's made payable to the people that are on that joint account. Well, we wouldn't cash that check if it was the or on there.
Okay.
But just to take a step back, just real quick, with the keeping the register, that's probably the most important thing you can do, the overdraft fee. Has anybody in here ever had an overdraft fee? It's not fun to have an overdraft fee. You know what? I'm gonna let you on the secret.
Now, I'll tell you, there's no secret.
Yeah.
PNC Bank gives most overdraft to everybody than any other bank in Pittsburgh.
I think that could be arguable, but I will let you in on the secret here though. So, every bank, I don't care if it's PNC Bank, Citizens Bank, Dollar Bank, S&T Bank, Bank of America, they all want to make money off of overdraft fees. All right? So that's just the plain matter of the fact, okay? Banks will make money off overdraft fees. But
Bank will make lots of 50
it's
cents.
any bank that's gonna do it. You can get an overdraft for a penny, and you're gonna get hit with a
But
fee.
that's the reason for this class, is
Yeah.
just to make sure that doesn't happen.
To
And
make
that's
sure
why
it
it's
doesn't happen.
important to keep a register. That's
Yeah.
what Russell was.
And that's why I
saying.
wanted to say, emphasize that this is the most important thing you can do is keep a record. Because like Penny said, the ATM machine, you can get a receipt from the ATM machine that says you got available balance of dollars. So really, you only got $150 in your account. You know, but that receipt's telling you I got 300 available. You know, that transaction hasn't hit your account yet. So it's some people call it old school, keeping the handwritten register, but that's the best way. Because even if you come to the bank, we could tell you, oh yeah, you have $500 available in your account.
But we don't know what
just
you
wrote,
have
we don't know you
outstanding.
just wrote a check to pay a bill for $200. You know, we don't know that. So it's very important for you to keep that record to avoid overdraft fee, to know exactly where you stand, so when you're making your budget, you know exactly what you're working with. So I just want to stress that that's the most important thing you can do with your checking account,
Some
is
banks
keep
give
that
you an
record.
email telling you you only have
We do
$8.
that too.
We do offer emails.
But that was not what
Yeah.
PNC.
We
You
do
go
offer
there and say, I
emails.
thought, they say, too bad.
We do offer emails, so just to let you know, if you bank with us, with the email alert, we'll email you and let you know. You can set it up and say, I want to get an email if my balance gets below $50. We'll shoot you an email and say your balance is below $50. And at the time, and using your debit card, there's a thing called opt-in, opt-out. So, and all you should be educated on this also. So what opt-in, opt-out is, and this is for every bank, what opt-in, opt-out is that when you opt in with your card, that's you telling the bank, Mr. Banker, that's me telling you I'm opted in, that's me telling you if I use my card and I don't have enough money in my account to cover this transaction, by me telling you I'm opted in, that's me telling you let that transaction go through.
And I know I'm gonna get.
I know I'm going to get charged the overdraft fee, but I want that transaction to go through. Now, you can opt out. And what opting out means with your debit card, if you don't have enough money in your account, on page 14, was it? Or 4 paragraph down, it says, let's assume that Lisa receives a $500 check and takes it to her bank to be deposited. She would like to take $50 in cash. Her deposit slip might look like this. So we see this mistake often also. So she wants to get $50 back in cash, and she wants to deposit her check. So she's not depositing any cash at all. So on the deposit slip example here, she has the date written out, has her name on there, your account number will be on there, but she has the check. She has the check listed where the checks are supposed to be listed at, not underneath the cash. And we'll talk about that in a second. But she has the $500 check listed, and under less cash, because that's the amount of money that she wants to get back from that check, she has the $50 listed. And then her net deposit going into her account is going to be $450. So this is exactly how the deposit is supposed to be put in and fill out the deposit slip for this type of example. Now, has anyone ever deposited a check and you thought the whole amount was going to be available to you right away, or you thought you filled out the check and you wanted that full amount as cash? In the early years. So we have a lot of young people here today. So when you are filling out a deposit slip, it's important that you distinguish if you want that check to go in as a check or if you want that check to go in as cash. If you want the check to be cashed and put into your account as cash, then that check, the same $500 check, will be listed up top underneath the cash. So we want that check going in as cash. So the teller will cash your check and put that amount in as cash. All right, so very important that you fill that out correctly. All right. Any questions or anything, Rhonda? Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference from the check going in as cash opposed to it going in as a check?
Great question. We're going to talk about that. Well, we can talk about it now. It's on the next one, page 16, but we'll talk about it now. So the difference being, and this is just with PNC, when you deposit as cash, those funds are available to you right away, instantly, available for you to withdraw, available to pay bills or checks that you have coming into your account. So if you put it in as a check, then you have to wait for that check to clear. So for our funds availability with PNC, so for the first 30 days, you're considered a new customer. All right, so the first 30 days, you're considered a new customer. Any check that you deposit into your account that's $50,000 or lower is going to be available to you in 2 business days. All right, 2 business days. And our business days are Monday through Friday. Okay, so if you deposit after that 30 days, you're considered a seasoned customer, and you're out of that 30-day new account period. You deposit a check, is available to you the next business day. So you deposit that check on a Monday, is available to you midnight Monday for Tuesday. All right?
I was going to say, if you deposit, let's say someone else's check from another bank.
Yeah.
In here as cash.
Yeah.
Is your process to check and see if there's an amount of money in your account?
Yes, so that's a good question.
That can go in there.
Yes, that's a good question. So if you're depositing a check that's from Citizens Bank into your PNC account and you want that to go in as cash, you need to have that amount in your account available to cover that check. All right, so if you got a $300 check from Citizens, you need to have at least $300 in your PNC account in order for it to go in as cash. If you don't have that, you can still deposit it. There'll be $100 available to pay items that are coming through, and then the rest of it will be available to you the very next business day. All right, so there are some alternatives to making a deposit, like we already said, with the mobile banking, but through our ATM machine also. If you deposit, if you need some of that cash available and you don't have it in your account, let's say you got that $300 check, but you only got $100 in your account. You can deposit that check through the ATM machine. It's going to give you $100 available right away. All right, so you can withdraw that right away. So you can at least have some funds in your pocket, and then the rest is still going to clear the very next business day.
One more question.
Yeah.
If that check comes from your bank,
Yeah,
then is it available immediately?
it's available immediately. If you fill out the deposit ticket underneath the cash. So that's another thing. People will say, well, it's a PNC check. I made a deposit, PNC check, it should be available right away. But if you fill out that deposit slip and you got it filled out underneath check, It's gonna go in as a check.
So it's available to pay checks that night if it's a PNC. So if you're like, oh, I got checks that are gonna clear, but if you wanna go to the ATM and take out cash, unless you cash it, it's not gonna be available if it's a PNC check. And the reason why we have to hold other checks is because a check is a piece of paper till we collect off of the bank. And sometimes PNC has a very lenient funds bill. I've worked for 3 other banks before I came to PNC, and when I came, I'm like, woo, this is lenient, you know, because where I came from, it was 3 to 5 business days, 7, and we can still do that if we have a reason to believe, for some reason, we're not gonna get payment from that check. But a check is a piece of paper until we collect from the other bank, okay? So sometimes we may make it available to you, so who's gotten a check from somebody, put it in their account, and the check came back after you spent the money, because we made it available. So they overdrew your account, okay, and that happens. So that's the reason why. So, you know, we really do make it, it's very lenient, and sometimes it's like giving you money before we even collect it. That next day funds availability, in a lot of cases, we're giving you a loan before we even collect it from the other bank. So checks can be returned, so that's one of the reasons. But because of the technology world in some cases, but usually after 5 business days, in a lot of cases, it is considered as paid.
What's the cutoff for next day? Like if it's over 4,000 or over 5,000, you still
50,000.
clear the next day?
50,000, so anything
So not until
after that
5
30-day
days.
period, after your 30-day new account period,
Yes.
if you deposit any check that's 50,000 or below, it's available to you the next day. Anything above 50,000 is 2 days. So it's not a whole extended period, it's still 2 days with that 50,000.
Would an income tax return check have to sit for a day, or can you just go cash that?
That had to sit for a day also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though it's coming from the government?
Even though
I don't know what's going on.
Direct deposit is good.
Yeah. So if we want to go to the next page, 15. So after you make that deposit, the most important thing that you have to do after you make that deposit is to record that deposit until you register. All right? So you know exactly where your balance is sitting at after that deposit. So it just gives you a quick example there. This is going back to the example with Lisa. Her balance forward was 489.67. You can see just a little bit of her recording her deposits there. She had her Sunshine Daycare check for $45.50 come out. ATM cash that she did a withdrawal from. A debit card, she used her debit card to buy some groceries. And then she deposited her paycheck, and notice she put less $50. So she can have that for her record. She knows she gets $500 for her paycheck, but she's putting in that record that I only deposited $450 because I got $50 back. So she knows exactly where her money is at, where it's going. All right, and then guess what her corresponding balance is? $839.17 now. So she's spot on exactly what she needs to do, and that's the importance of keeping that registered. All right, so next we're going to talk about endorsing a check. Before you can deposit a check that is made out to you, you need to endorse it by signing the back of the check near the top as indicated. You also need to endorse the check if you're going to cash it, or to sign the check made out to you to cover out to you over to someone else. All right. So, any questions around endorsement on the checks?
If you deposit a check in the ATM and you don't endorse it, you generally cash it, right?
Yeah, if it's a check on it. Now, as long as that check is made payable to you.
Exactly.
So on the examples here, it gets, Lisa endorsed her check, it's just her. All right, but now on the one right next to her, she made her check, payable to someone else. All
We
right.
don't cash those.
Yeah.
Well, why did she have to sign it?
So Martin Patton came in, is that right? Second endorsement?
Yeah, well, that would get, it would get rejected out of the ATM.
And we see that a lot, because people use the ATM a lot, so what we see is there may be a check made payable to Penny and Russell. Russell goes in and signs it, he signs it, puts it through the ATM, and they don't know who I am, so those will get rejected.
Yeah. Everyone understand that right there?
What's the
It'll
difference?
it'll take the deposit, give you a receipt, and then what happens is once it goes through processing, it'll recognize that that was a check made payable to more than one payee, and then it'll debit it back out of your account.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused.
Okay.
Now, Lisa wrote a check to Martin Patton. Is that what that means?
She wrote the check over to Martin Patton. So what happens on the
Oh, it was
second?
her check.
It was her check.
She signed it
She signed it over
Martin.
to him.
Ah, okay, now.
She signed it over to him. So that's the case where with P&C, we would want both people there.
Oh, right, yeah.
All right, because what can happen is, easily what can happen is that second person can say, let's just say with Penny's example, we have a check that's made payable to both of us, and she goes into the bank, signs her name, deposits it into her account. Who said that? I said that she can have all that money deposited into her account. All right, the check was made payable to both of us. So that's why when you have a check made payable to more than one person, we want to have those people there with their proper identification, so we can say, okay, this person is agreeing for this check to go into somebody else's account.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Any other questions around that? Endorsements on the check? So page 16 talks about funds availability. We talked about that already with funds availability. Any questions around that? We pretty much covered that. All right. Page 17, I won't go through all this in detail, but just give you some tips on helping your checking account. Having a routine for paying your bills, recording all your transactions, keeping your PIN number private. And lady back here in the corner, you had mentioned when you were talking about, some things happen where your daughter might have did a transaction or some things like that. That's something that we know happens, but we don't recommend that you give your card, hey, go to the ATM for me, or go to the store for me, because things like that can happen where there's transactions that you're unaware of. But that's an authorized transaction. You willingly gave up your PIN number. So you never, ever want to give up that PIN number, even the family. So don't give up that PIN number, because I'm sure everybody in here can, all three of us have stories we can tell about, I gave my PIN number to somebody and now they regret it.
Just real quick on that, there's a lot of scams that's going around, and I don't know if it covers it, and we won't go into that, so I'm just gonna mention it. But, a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of the younger people are meeting people on the bus, meeting them in school, just, there's a way you can make some money. They give out their online banking, user ID and password, and what are these people doing? They know that they can make a deposit on the mobile, okay? We see a lot of that happening. There's just a lot of scams. You have the lottery scams. You have the Craigslist scams. You have Monster.com. You go in and look for a job. People sending you checks and saying you got $5,000 up front. Go deposit it into the bank, and they send us back $3,000. That will never happen. Okay? But we see a lot. And people are very vulnerable. My son, when he was in college, he came to me and said, Mom, what if somebody gave me a check for $6,000, because, I'm going to get this job? And I said, Kevin, nobody's going to give you anything because they want it back. He's like, well, I need that money. I said, yeah, but you're going to owe the bank and you're going to get in trouble. Okay.
And since we do have a lot of young people in here, there is a lot of social media scams out there. There was one big one out there where they were saying, if you give us your PIN number or debit card number, we'll give you this much money, And I can't tell you how many kids with parents were in my office over that scam. It cost a lot of people a lot of money. Even the FBI got involved. It got so big. But please be aware of those type of scams. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. All right. So on page 18, I'm going to have you do a little bit of practice of writing out a check, recording your deposits, and making sure that your registers should match up. So if you look at the directions there, let's practice writing checks and recording information in check register. Assume that the addition to the examples we have already seen. Lisa Patton had the following transactions. Maybe just need your handheld a little bit more when it comes to investing. So we have that department that handles that, and in-house folks that handle that. Then you have your seasoned investors, so that are a different level. And then you have, what's called our wealth management department, where you got to have $1 million in investable assets just to talk to that group.
Okay.
So at different levels, we have that set up for wherever you're at.
And so then the second part of that question is, you know, for some of us who have just recently gone into the world of grandparenthood, how do we start putting money aside for our grandchildren for college or?
That's it.
To be the same group that you would talk to. They would have the same conversation we have about giving the best checking account. They cater to your lifestyle, what you're trying to do, what you want to achieve. So the kids would be as honest with them about what you want, and then they'll find the best product for you.
And what you're saying for us, popular product is our 529 savings plan. That's a college savings plan, and that can be started for as little as $25.
But you can even do that. On the bank side, we don't have a college savings plan, but we have what we call custodial accounts for a parent can open up an account for their child. And there's no balance requirement as long as we use the child's social security number and if they're under 18. So for instance, you know, I have one for my grandson. I have a 6-year-old grandson, so when he was born, I opened up a savings account for him. You know, and without worrying about keeping a balance requirement. So I'm the custodian, which means I'm the only one that can sign, but I use his name, his social security number, because of the birthday, you don't have to keep a balance requirement. So that's on the bank side.
Okay.
But then on the other side, grandparents still open up investment accounts for their grandkids, and the 529 plan is an option for education as well. You don't have to have a bunch of money for that.
Thank you.
No, I was just gonna ask, like, where's the central place to get the information as far as the investment side?
Any branch, you can stop in the branch and we will get somebody on the phone. Like I said, we will determine which way you should go, but we have a call center dedicated just to that. You can stop at any branch and we will get somebody on the phone for you.
So what happens to us people who like to talk to people like that face to
We'll get
face?
somebody,
You still have
we will, whatever works best for you. Just the way that the world is going, it's just convenient to